My name's Carson. Again, I work alongside Esther Schwenning at Northern Lights Denture Clinic. I graduated from Dentures school in 2017. I went to a tiny town called Quesnel, British Columbia to do my internship, which was not with Esther. It was with a guy that had done and made dentures for 42 years. He press-packed, everything was traditional, and I got used to that way of it and thought, maybe this is as good as it gets. And then I ended up going back to my hometown, and Esther had reached out to me and she said, hey, pop by my clinic, we're all in the north, let's work together. So I stopped by her clinic and I was wowed because it was a state-of-the-art, office with state-of-the-art team. They worked so flawlessly together, and I thought, this is where the profession's going, and if you don't jump on board now, then how are you ever going to get there? And for me, I was planning on staying in Quesnel and purchasing the practice, and then realizing that it's actually going to cost me money to buy it, and then I'm actually losing money because I'd have to upgrade everything. I realized that I should join a team with a woman that was of Esther's caliber. So I jumped on the train, and right away she said, hey, we're going to Phoenix, we're going digital. And she said, what I've said to my team is, you will not lose your job, because at that time that was a huge topic. But she said, if you don't jump on board, then we'll just ask you to leave. So as our office switched, we had people buy in, and then unfortunately we did have people that due to life circumstances left, and going digital we didn't have to replace them. So we actually went from a 3-denturist team with 4 lab staff down to a 2-denturist team with 1 lab staff, and we've had a record-breaking year. And that I have to attribute fully to digital, because with the workload that we take on and the patients that we see during the day, if we were doing analog, there's no way we would have survived. So to touch on that a little bit more, this is where we started. It was, we had 4 workstations that we did all of our analog work at. We had 3 IVO-based machines, which we all still have. And like I said, we had the assistants in the back to help with the processing and repairs and different things. And then as we started going digital, we looked, Esther had just done a renovation in her clinic, and we said, well, the workflow in digital dentures is similar but different. And we follow a Kaizen concept of how the office was designed with a flow. And we said, how are we going to convert this to digital? Because at the time we were designing dentures in our lunchroom. And so that made things a little bit busy. So by some miracle, our grinding machine hose broke one Friday, which we don't work Fridays, and our other denturists walked into a foot of water in our office. So we ended up having a huge insurance claim, and it gave us a chance to modify our office into a digital office that we had dreamed of. So again, you can make a crappy situation a good one. So when I joined Esther's team, the guy I work for, he said, don't network, stay in your own little bubble, and don't put yourself out there. And for me, that was a little bit odd. I was like, don't you want to make friends and find out what people are doing? And he was like, no, it brings attention that sometimes you don't really want. Then I joined Esther's team, and it was like, holy cow, I didn't think I'd travel this much for work. My stepson's like, where are you going? I'm like, oh, I'm going to Chicago, or we're going to New York. He's like, man, are dentures really that cool? I'm like, yeah, actually they are kind of cool. So this map just kind of shows where Esther and I have been with digital. When we started, there wasn't the courses, there wasn't the support, there wasn't the Facebook groups that we all have now to find out how to do these things. When we got it, we spent countless nights till 1, 2 a.m. And I joked yesterday, but Esther was opening a brewery up at the same time. And I think between the beer that we drank, the tears, and the bulk packs of Kleenex that we bought at Costco, the trips, lent us some fun. But we've spent tons of money traveling around to find out how we do this, and to find out and then create something so that for people jumping into digital now, you don't have to pull the all-nighters, you don't have to, cry tears and hate it and, wreck your computer. So this is where we are today. These photos were taken at a digital night. So what we're trying to do now is incorporate the dental professionals in Prince George into our office to find out what we're doing and for them to understand the type of prosthetics that we're giving them, say for immediate insertions. And then to show them just kind of the level and the caliber and the accuracy that we're at, because some of them, like I said, we're a small town, so we want to keep everything networked quite positively and closely together, but we want to show them that, hey, dentures are cool, and hey, why don't we take on your denture work? We'll send you back, partial referrals because we need those teeth checked, and let's all work together. So this was a very successful night. You can just see Esther there around some of our design stations, and they were amazed, absolutely amazed at what we were doing. So currently in the office, this is what we have. The Trios 3, which is my favorite digital tool that we have. We have 3 design stations, one of which is a beta testing station for 3Shape. Our first digital endeavor, we bought a Micron printer, which was really cool, except that we didn't have any design software at the time, so the only thing we could print were toys. But it was a good learning curve. That printer had us at 28-hour print times. Then we jumped up a little bit and we got the Formlabs 2 printer, which we were happy with because that took us down to a 16-hour print time. So that was a huge jump for us. Then we got our golden ticket, the Asiga, and that's our primary printer that we use right now. We also have the PM7. The Bellis facial scanner, which I'll talk about in depth a little bit later. And then we just received some Epson Vario glasses, which basically mirror what you see on your Trios screen right in front of you. So it's a virtual reality type of glasses. If there's anything that I think is going to be the next level for digital dentures and where things are going, it's going to be the virtual reality aspect of, I think, the design. Just because, like I said, it is 3D. But you're still working in a 2D type of perception on the computer. So that was something that's really cool. We're still trying to work out all the kinks on it, but it's made scanning a lot easier. So the Trios, like I said, this is my favorite tool, and it's my favorite tool for multiple reasons, but primarily because the day before we got it, I took an alginate impression with the girl that I actually went to high school with, and she puked all over me. And it was like 9 a.m., and I was like, how the hell could you possibly eat that much breakfast? But I just said, I'm done getting puked on, I don't like it. And then this Trios came, and I was like, well, this I will do everything I can to make sure that I use this and don't have to take an alginate impression. And our patients are much happier too. When you tell them that they don't have to go through that anymore, they're quite receptive of it all. So the Trios has a lot of different functions that you can use it for, and I'll go over that today. And then we'll also get into some workflows. And please, you guys, if you guys have any questions at all, just pop your hand up, wave it around, and you guys can ask away. So today we're going to cover the Trios misconceptions. When I was talking to Richard about this at the convention that I met him at, we had a conversation in depth about, can you scan edentulous tissue? Is it accurate? All these questions came up. So we had an in-depth phone conversation with Stephanie as well, and decided upon this lecture. So we'll talk about the misconceptions, aligning the 2 edentulous scans, because that's something that I'm seeing all over social media, where people have done these beautiful edentulous scans, but they don't know how to align them into the proper bite. We'll do the cases where I believe that the Trios wins and just lends you a lot more accuracy. We'll talk about the 3D facial scanning, the Bellis, which has been a game changer for us in our office. And then I'll run through a fully digital workflow with you guys. So the main question, like I said, that's come up not only with Richard, but with people that you talk to in the halls, or the things that you meet on this or read on the social media facets is, they want to know if it's accurate. So when Esther and I were talking about this, she said, I will only get into something if it can make the same quality product that we're currently making, or if it can make something substantially better. That was our goal, and at Northern Lights, that's what we do. So that was the big question. The other question that's been huge is about the edentulous scanning. Can it do it? Is it accurate? And how easy is it? Is it worth it to try and do the scan, or is it quicker to just take an alginate impression? And again, we'll get into that in a little bit. And then the other thing, everyone was wanting to know, well, what cases do you use it for? Do you only use it for immediates? Do you only use it when they have some dentition? Or, what are your go-to choices for using this tool? And my answers in short form are, yes, it's accurate. Yes, you can scan edentulous tissue, and you literally can use it for every case. So this was huge, and people's jaw kind of drops. And don't get me wrong, yes, it can do it. But is it easy? No, not initially it is not. It's a learning curve just like everything is, but in short, it can be done. So 2 key things come up, and I've just heard this in Erica Kuchka's lecture as well, and a few others, is mucostatic and mucocompressive. So when we're talking about mucostatic, to me, that's basically what the Trios does. It's taking photographs. It's not displacing the tissue at all. So again, when we're grabbing those photographs, you're not pushing down or compressing and displacing that tissue. So this is an example here. You can see the photo on the left, the patient's retracted. Obviously, he's edentulous. Photo number 2 shows how I like to scan. Everyone's a little bit different, but I put them in a lean back position. I have gauze there on his bib because we don't have suction in our office and we don't have air. And the downfall with the Trios is it doesn't like anything shiny and it doesn't like stuff that's quite smooth. Well, when we're looking at edentulous tissue, I've basically just described it. So there's certain tricks that you can use, but keeping everything as dry as you can is the ticket. Also, smokers will become your new favorite patient when you're doing these types of scans. We often ask them when they come in, are you a smoker? They reply, yes, or they'll lie about it, and you're like, yes! And the one guy sat up in the chair, he was like, what do you mean yes? That's the first time I've ever gone to a dental provider, and they've been like, oh, it's a good thing I smoke. I'm like, no, it's bad, but it's good for today. Now we've just shortened our appointment a little bit because my scanner's gonna love you. But you should also, maybe go on the patch or do something about that. Then we can see in this third scan, I had one of our front-end girls just take a photo while we were scanning. So basically when I'm talking about the virtual reality glasses, this picture that's here on the right is the one that's then projected in a 3D view for you. So you can see here as you're scanning what you're picking up, what areas you're missing, what landmarks you need to get. So now we talk about the other one, which is the mucocompressive. So this is where, final impressions are mucocompressive, or anywhere that you're displacing those tissues and you're using them in a functional impression. The only thing that's mucostatic in our office that we do are immediate dentures and then some partials. So this patient, his name is Tim. He's a fantastic guy. He came into our office, and I'll show you. I have a before and after later on in the slide, but he had an original set of dentures made by the guy that I had previously worked for. He is a recovering drug addict, and he's actually going back into rehab again. So his story is one that kind of pulls on your heartstrings a little bit. But a guy, I think, that was stereotyped and not given proper care just because of his life choices. So when he came in, he was severely overclosed. His mouth basically looked like ground up hamburger. And he had really no money. He's like, I can't function anymore. I can't eat. He'd lost over 30 pounds already. So we worked as a team, and I'm like, you know what? We'll work together with you, but I'm gonna, as long as it's okay, I wanna tell your story, and I wanna show people about what we're gonna do with you and how digital has literally changed your life. So he cried, he was happy, and he came in for a few appointments. So what we're doing here is we're taking a mucocompressive final impression, and then we're scanning that in with the Trios. So again, when we relate back to those questions, is it accurate? This study came up, and this name to me is huge. He was somebody that honestly motivated me to start doing this and to get where I am today. But Dr. Lucio is the one that I first saw do an edentulous scan, and that was at a time when people said that you couldn't do it. So what I did is, I tried it. It motivated me. I'm like, if he can do it, and he has a Trios, and I have a Trios, why can't I do it? So I spent an afternoon just playing around with it with the patients. I stole them all from Esther. And I said, I need to figure this out. So then I saw that he had published something because, then the question was, well, if your trio's scanning it and it's mucostatic, are the dentures even going to fit? Are they going to work? And when you're looking at digital, there's a lot of aligning that has to happen and things like that. And with the trios, it's photographs. So those photographs have to align properly, and they're accurate. They're to a micron or something of accuracy, so it's there. But the thing is that if you don't align things properly, then that's where it becomes inaccurate. So just like if you take a good impression, 9 times out of 10 your prosthetic is beautiful unless there's another error that goes on. But the same thing comes down to if you take an underextended or you don't take a good impression, is that denture really going to fit how you dreamed it to fit? No, it's not. Digital doesn't take away from the fact that if you put good things into it, you will get good things out of it. If you think that you're going to do click, click, boom with digital, and it's click here, click there, and now I'm a fantastic, dental architect. It doesn't work that way. So this study is absolutely amazing. The thing I want to highlight here is there's no clinical significant difference between the two methods. And the two methods he did were an intraoral scan and a conventional impression. So this was absolutely huge for me when I found this out. And I ran to the back and I told Esther, I'm like, look at what I just found. And so she's like, well, that's good. Let's play around with it a little bit more. So here's for reference, if you guys want to find this, it is online. I believe it's around $15 to purchase. He has photographs, a whole bunch of other amazing stuff. It's definitely worth the read. So we sat down and we talked about it and said, how are we going to incorporate this intraoral scanner? What are we going to use it for? Where are we going to benefit? Because at the end of the day, as much as we're denturists, we're running a business. So we still want to make sure that, our chair time's effective, what we're doing effective, is so that our profit margins can be as big as they can be. Yeah.
Back a slide? Yeah, can you go back one slide? Can you go back one slide, please?
Yeah,
they want to take a picture of it.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Fire away. Look at that. Look at the cameras come out.
Boom, boom.
Okay, here we go. Thank you.
Got it. Okay. So what we did is all of our immediate dentures are now done with the trios. We don't take alginate impressions anymore for immediate dentures, and I'll go through that a little bit later as to the why. And the other thing that I think is also amazing and something to note is that we don't put post-dams in any of our dentures. The fit is that good that you don't need to, and the accuracy of the scan is absolutely amazing. So all replacement dentures we do with a mucocompressive type of impression. So we follow the Dr. Abe's suction denture technique. That's what we apply. And for lower dentures, whether or not they get the suction that you see on YouTube, it's still a much more stable denture. Now the thing is that when you're doing the suction denture technique, you're having the patient swallow, move its tongue around, make different faces because you're activating all those muscles in the mouth. Unfortunately, with the trios, you can't record those type of muscle movements. So for a lower denture, yes, you can scan it mucostatically for an initial placement on an immediate, but after that, we are following up with tissue conditioners, or we're doing chairside relines, or we're doing a hard reline where, again, we are compressing that tissue because we need them to move their face in order to activate those muscles to make the denture more stable. That was a big question after yesterday's lecture, is what are we doing specifically with the lower denture, and that's it. So we start mucostatic, we finish mucocompressive. Now, when we get into the topic of partials, this is one that Esther and I still are kind of going back and forth on. Yes.
Just a quick question.
Go ahead.
So with the lower denture, when you reline it, so are you relieving it to be able to reline again in order to get those your muscle movements and everything?
So what we're doing is when we make it mucostatic, so let's say for an immediate denture, so they've had it placed in, we see them after for their post-op, we check it. Now, tissue conditioners don't stick to printed dentures. That's a huge one. So if we're doing a hard, just chair side tissue conditioner or reline, what we do is we've extended the denture in our design to follow the principles of how the suction denture should be shaped. So before we actually do the reline or we do the tissue conditioner, we use a fit check material. If you guys haven't heard of it before, you can bug me about it after. It is the most amazing material that you will probably use in your office. It's expensive, but it's like a pip paste on glue. Like, it's unreal. So we do that, we double check our extensions, and then we go through with a tissue conditioner or the chairside reline or a lab processed reline, and those we're all having them do the facial movements. Does that make sense? Okay. So getting back to the partials, right now for a tooth-supported partial, the fit is phenomenal, and we're finding that we're not getting them back for near as many adjustments. When we talk about a free end partial, that's a little bit of a different story. For the uppers, I find that they work better and we don't have near as many adjustments when they're strictly made off of a mucostatic impression, so with just a trio scan. When we're again talking about a lower free end, it becomes a little bit of a different story. So right now we're still running through how we're doing that, but in some cases we are doing a split cast. So we will get the frame made off of the intraoral scan. We'll get it back, we'll set up teeth or bite blocks, and then what we'll do is we'll use polyvinyl in the saddle and then split cast the rest and go to a process with that. So stats don't lie, and we had our guy that runs our scheduling software pull this number for us, but our adjustments in 1 year are down 82.3%. When Esther and I heard this, I won't lie to you, we've been running with, by the seat of our pants for the whole year. We've been so busy because we lost a denturist because she went and had a baby. But we were go, and you feel like you're just seeing more patients than you were before, which obviously we are because we're taking on the load of 3 denturists with 2. And then we saw this stat and we were like, wow, well, this all makes sense now. We've had record-breaking months, we've had a record-breaking year. And now we can attribute it, I think, to this statistic, because in our office, we don't charge for our adjustments if we've made the denture. So on average, probably about 2 adjustments we like to aim for a patient wearing a new prosthetic. When you get upwards into the 5, 6, that's when the denture almost starts losing you money. When you don't have to see that patient 4, 5, 6 times after insertion, that just creates free time for you to start work, to finish work, and the big money type of appointments. So this was absolutely huge for our office. And I think this number can be correlated to a lot of factors. I don't think it's one thing in particular. I think it comes down to the products that we are making now are accurate, and that comes from the intraoral scanning, the impressions, all the way to now how they're being processed with the mill, because we've taken a lot of human error out of our manufacturing. So is it accurate? Yes, yes, and yes. This case came into me just before we came to Chicago. I talked to the oral surgeon about it just because it's quite a large AP spread. And what had happened is she actually had a hater bar on where that milled bar is, but other denturists in our town had made a denture and the occlusion was off, causing the implants to fail. So she had to have that removed, and then they placed a milled bar in there. So normally we like to put a substructure in the denture. With her, we just didn't really have enough room. So I talked to the oral surgeon, and because our teeth are all bridged now when we mill them, so they come in a full span, it offers less of the flexure. So when I talked to him about that, he's like, you know what, I think that should be good. Let's try it. But the reason I love this case so much is because there is no way that I would have got this accurate of a representation of what her mouth was if I had used alginate, because alginate sticks around that hater bar, it pulls off, everything gets a little bit distorted. The other reason that I love that we did this with an intraoral scanner was you can see where her denture line finished. And I explained to her, like, this is, we're going to extend it a little bit further because we obviously need to relieve that area. So when you can bring them into the treatment planning, they love it. They love to see their own mouth. They love to look and help and feel like they're in the driver's seat. And that's one thing I think I've learned the most in this last year, is the more that you can involve a patient in their treatment, the more successful you will be as a practitioner, because they feel that they've made the choice in how their future will be. And that's huge. So then the other huge question is, can it scan edentulous tissue? Yes, yes, and yes. This was a scan that I did of Tim's. So I did a mucostatic, which was this one, and I also did a mucocompressive, like you guys saw earlier in the dentures. So I just wanted to see how well it could pick it up, and it picked it up quite well. Tim doesn't smoke. But it still worked pretty good. The only areas that you're going to have trouble with are the retromolar pads, just because they're a little bit tricky with the cheeks, and the anterior ridge sometimes because it is quite smooth and shiny with all the saliva ducts around there. So this turned out quite well. What we do like about this is we now have a forever record of what those patients' jaw looked like in, February of 2020. So when he comes back in a year and we scan him again, you can overlay the scans and say, hey, you're shrinking. This is how much you've shrunk. This is why your denture's loose. This is why aftercare and prosthetics is so important. And we always have it. So this was me. When I did it, we had a joyous moment together because, it couldn't be done. That's always what they said. And then, we did it together, and thank God for his patience, because I'm not that quick at it yet, but I'll get there. But it's pretty satisfying when you can get all of that information in a half an hour appointment. But then I was like this, because I'm like, oh my God, how do I put these things together? So in our office, we follow the BPS type of scheduling. So in our analog world, we would take a maxillary impression, a mandibular impression, then we would use a centric tray. Are you guys all familiar with the centric tray? Do you guys know what it is? It's basically like an adult soother that you put alginate or putty on the top and the bottom. We place it against the maxillary arch, have the patient close halfway and swallow. And we get them to swallow because when they do, it pulls their mandible into the furthest back position that they can get in, which is the one that we need in order to set teeth correctly. So I'm like, okay, so I have the upper, I have the lower, now let's try a centric tray. So I used a centric tray, and it was great until, the centric tray is, that big. And then I have to try and get the trios in the cheek, and I'm like, there's just too much. So, I thought about it a little bit more. I talked to Esther about it. I'm like, hey, Tim, just let's wait, let's have a coffee, let's figure this out. So then I'm like, you know what? If a centric tray, I just need to make it smaller. What's something that I have that is smaller? So I pulled out our drawer of all our fun tools, and I'm like, there's a tongue depressor. I just call it a popsicle stick. I'm like, this is a lot thinner. It lets me hold it. I'm going to try and do this. So what you can see here is I have the cheek retractors, which I just used to scan him. The cup there is full of alginate. We pre-mix them. We pre-measure them, and then we mix them. And then there's a trio tip that's been sterilized and the spatula to mix it. And on the left there, you can see that's how our trios computer is set up. So first step, obviously, is we need to scan the patient. What we're trying to tell the trios here is, hey, I basically need a maxillary impression, I need a mandibular impression, then we're going to tell the computer how we want it aligned together. So you'll scan the bottom jaw first, you'll trim it like I'm doing there in the second photo, and then you'll keep going, and it's nice, like I said, because you can see exactly what you're scanning and what you're looking for. Then Luke LaRock-Walker out of Alberta, when I was talking to him about this method and posted it on one of our groups, he's like, totally looks like cotton candy on that stick. So that's step 2, we cotton candy the alginate onto the end of the popsicle stick. Make it a little bit thicker. If it's really runny, obviously it's going to run all over. We want it, cushy enough that the patient's still going to be able to put its jaw into it, but also not so runny that it's running down the back of their throat, because that's the whole reason we got into digital, was to avoid that. So then you have the patient sitting back in a nice relaxed position. You place it in, have them close halfway and swallow, and then hold in that position. What I do then is we're just basically waiting for this alginate to harden. is where you can dot the nose and the chin, because also what we like to do is get as much data as we can. So now we're going to measure his freeway. So here on the left, you can see that I've cut that popsicle stick down, and I actually like to cut it down a little bit more. Yeah?
So how do you know
Oh.
that bite that the patient bit halfway?
So the question was, with the bite, how do you know that he bit halfway? And my short answer is you're going to have to wait 2 slides, and I'll tell you, okay? Great question, though. Great question. So I trim it down so that basically the lips aren't affected by the alginate record that I have of the alignment of his bite. Then we use the boley gauge. We get the freeway measurement. This is really important. Dentists love numbers, as do we. And so when you can say, hey, this is the freeway that we're at, and for years down the road, when you can throw this into a patient file, it's something that's very important when you go forward with treatment planning for patients, for jaw health, for rehabilitation, for all of that kind of stuff. So now what you do is you put the popsicle stick back in the mouth. In photo number 2, you can see that Tim helped me. I told him that if he dropped it, he'd have to work for us for the rest of his life because it's really expensive, and I'd also get fired if he dropped it. So you have the patient help you out a little bit there. But what you're doing is you're getting the scanner into the cheek, then you're placing the alginate bite basically in their mouth. And what you're doing with the scanner is you're scanning along the side here. Okay? What you're telling it is saying, I want you now to reference points from your top scan and your bottom scan, and I want you to align them in that bite. Does that make sense? Okay. So you can see there on the picture on the right, there's something blue on that computer screen. That is what the Trios is recording as your right bite and your left bite. The nice thing about this method is because the alginate's only placed in the anterior region of those tissues, and we're scanning at the posterior, which isn't compressed by any alginate, we're still aligning mucostatic with mucostatic. Because that was an issue too that was coming into play, is that when you start scanning something like the bite registration, when the tissues have been compressed, it's obviously different from when you were scanning and the tissues weren't compressed. So this is also why I love doing it this way. And then we can see here that you are aligning the arches. 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to pick points. And this is where I can reference back to the article by Dr. Lucio, that you're only as good as you are at aligning a bite, okay? This is really important. And I'm just going to point out a really cool feature that I just figured out before we came here. This is a color wheel up in the right-hand side, and it turns your model into stone. This is a lot easier to look at, to pick reference points than looking at this with the pink. Okay, that's just my preference, but kind of a funky tool. So here you can see that it is aligned. And to answer your question, now we can double check the parallelism. This, when you're going quite quickly, with the trimming and everything, probably takes you about 3 minutes. 3 minutes and you now have an upper, you now have a lower, and you have it articulated in a way that you're going to build a denture off of this. If you did this and you realized, hey, you're way too open, or you're way too closed, or you bit all the way off to the left, you just do it again. And you can use this as a communication tool and say, hey, I want your jaws to line up like this. What you did is you kind of went way over here. When patients see this, they want to help, they want to do good, and most times they'll pop out of the chair and they'll be like, hey, how's it going? Did we get it? Did we get it? And they're excited, and they're involved. And I love it because it's a visual. I love visuals. That's how I learn. And it's also a nice way to a nice thing to incorporate into your practice, because I find a lot of people are more receptive when they see something that's actually theirs up on a screen. So again, parallelism, we've measured the IOD. You can retake the bite if you want, and again, patient explanation is huge. So I was happy with this. This is something that I could definitely build either a tray off of, or I can build a try-in off of, and we've got all this data in about half an hour. So To highlight that third question that I had a lot is, what cases can you use it for? In short, yes, you can use it for every case. Are there some cases where it's more time efficient for you to maybe just take an impression? Yes. And that depends on your workflow. It also depends on your practice. So I'll highlight a few. There's 4 that I think that the Trios absolutely wins. And for the primary reason that it is way more accurate than it was when we did it traditionally. With that implant case that I showed you guys before, we had done, obviously, her denture previous, and she had said at this appointment, when we put the 3D printed try-in in there and it snapped in, she got scared because she thought it was her final denture, and she's super picky and she didn't like the color. So she freaked out, and we're like, no, like it's just a try-in. And she's like, wow, I have never had anything fit so well. So immediate dentures, we get quite a few of them up in Prince George, as you guys probably do everywhere else. They kind of come in waves. This was a guy that was 22 years old. He was in a lot of pain. He never smiled. He got referred to us by one of our dental colleagues. And he was a hard case. You can see in quadrant 1 and quadrant 4 there, his bone, his tuberosities hung down so low with his Kelly syndrome that we had to do some major bone reduction. And we looked at this and we're like, you know what, there's no way we would have ever been able to do an alginate impression with him because he was so sensitive. And the other thing is we would have totally lost our fingernails, grinding teeth down to make them fit back there. So with immediate dentures, these are the specific reasons why I think using the Trios is better, is you can now take patients that have mobile dentition and you can scan them and you can allow them the flexibility to insert the same day. When we had patients with mobile dentition before, or they were in a lot of pain, we'd say, you know what, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to get those teeth extracted. Come see us in a couple weeks or a week, and then we'll take impressions and start work. And I think some men are worried about it, but trying to tell a woman that is a whole different ballgame. And I mean, if it was me, there's no way in hell I would wanna go without my teeth for 2 weeks. So this was huge. Now 3D photo integration, this is something I'll talk about a little bit sooner with the Bellis 3D. This has changed our practice in more ways than one, but this function allows us to do a virtual try-in. So instead of having that patient come in and they're looking at a waxed up teeth on an articulator and being like, oh, that wax is pretty pink, or they can't visualize it in their mouth, and we can't see, how's their plane of occlusion, how's their smile lines, how's everything like that. We would go from try-ins that were quite unsuccessful like that to now being like, hey, these are the teeth, this is your face over the teeth, do you like it? Do you love your smile? And they think it's amazing. You can play with the Bellis, it's like a 3D bobblehead, and we always joke with them that we'll 3D print their head and keep it in the front office, so we have fun with it. Severe sensitivity, like I talked about a little bit before, similar to the mobile dentition, when before you couldn't get in there and offer them a same-day insertion, now you can, because with the Trios it doesn't really hurt. You're not running the tip along anything, so you hardly have to touch them, which is nice. Dental phobia is something that we see too day to day. Patients will come in, they're white knuckling the chair and scared all the time because they've heard the horror stories or they've Googled alginate impressions, and they don't want to be there. And then when you start talking about how they don't have to go through that, how we have this new technology, how we're taking photographs, they love it, and you can see their ease go right down. There's no drills, there's no sound like that, there's no mixing or cheek pulling too bad anyways, so patients are definitely relaxed. And then again, it lets us check our centric relation before the patient leaves. And that's huge because, again, if you would have taken alginate impressions on an upper and a lower and then a bite registration, you said see you later after you've talked about what they want, and then you go back in and it takes about half an hour to get those models poured up and articulated, and then you realize that they bit totally goofy. Now it's a phone call, you're getting them back in and things like that. So it just takes a lot of extra time. And for some of our patients, they're from out of town, so that's just not an option. They've already left and they live 4, 8, 12 hours away. So this is really nice. So partial dentures, this was a free end scan that we did in the office, one that looked pretty good. But with the partial, these are the reasons why, again, it's so awesome, is patient education. When people still have some teeth left and they get to see them on a screen, the biggest comment that we have had since we got the Trios is, I didn't think they were that bad. And, you know, it does make it look a little funky when the gold crown actually appears a little bit green, and you're like, no, it's not that color. But the thing is you can sit down and you can have a very real and honest conversation and say, if you don't keep these teeth healthy, you are now going to be in a full lower plate. And I tell them all the time, I make them, we use the best techniques possible, we use the best materials, and they still suck. Nobody wants to wear a lower denture. And that was something that I learned from Esther too. She said, you know, always under-promise and over-deliver. And that's not to say that our dentures suck by any means, but having to wear a lower denture is something that some people just don't want to be in, and therefore it will never be successful. So the other reason I like this is the practitioner communication. When we need rest preps done, when we need bone reduction done, anything like that, we now have a 3D representation of that patient, and we can take snapshots of it, circle it, or we can, you know, give them the login information to our 3Shape and Communicate account and say, hey, what do you think about this? Are there any teeth that we should be worried about? I'm maybe worried about this one. I'm thinking I want a prep done on the occlusal mesial of this. So the dentists are in awe about it because, again, you're involving them, which they like, and it's pretty cool when you can get a 3D scan sent to your office in real color of a mouth that they've actually worked on. Our chair time has gone down. When you get better at using the Trios, obviously you become quicker. So, you know, where we were doing the 2-step alginate impressions for our partials before, now we're just scanning them. So, you know, things get done quite quickly. At a max, it's about a 2-minute scan for a lower arch, and that's pretty good. So if you tack on, you know, another 1.5 minutes for the upper, in about 5 minutes, you're done. The accuracy, again, the partials that we have had in this last year fit better than anything I've ever seen. And I've worked in 3 different denture clinics, and we use a lab out of Ontario, Baluch, and they are absolutely fantastic. And the patients say they have their old partials. Some of them we've made, some of them we haven't. And they, you know, the stats say it all. They rarely come back for adjustments. They're comfortable. Again, they don't have to go through the impressions, and you're double checking that bite before they leave the office. So split cases are an interesting one, and we see quite a few of these. There's tons of benefits to doing these with an intraoral scanner, because you're getting your lower scan in that case for the partial to be done. The patients are comfortable again. They don't have to go through alginate. Obviously, we've done a polyvinyl on the upper, but those are pretty friendly impressions. You're going to have those sit-down chats about the dentition that's remaining. You're going to be able to talk to the dentist or whoever they may be seeing about, you know, rest preps, like I said before, anything that's concerning or anything that you want to highlight. And you have the data. The data is so important. When I look at this, I have her old denture, and I'll say, hey, Betty, like, what do you love about this? Is there anything that you love about this denture? Do you want me to keep it exactly the same? You know, we're looking at things like midline. We're looking at things like smile line. I have so much data here that if they want the exact same thing, we can literally give it to them. Before, you would have to take, you know, an alginate of their existing denture, and you're kind of looking at that, and you're going back, or you're doing some type of waxer on it, and this is quicker, and this is a lot more accurate. So we have the records always, which is great for denturists because we have to keep them for a certain amount of time. So instead of having buckets of models, now we have them all in digital files. Aesthetics are huge. This is why I love this when patients come in with existing dentures and you have those conversations. What do you love? What do you hate? What do you want out of your new smile? It's there and you have it. Chair time, again, it's much quicker and it's very accurate. This, implants are my favorite. I love doing them. This was a very interesting case. So we had a dentist in town. What you're seeing there on the upper is actually root tips that he's crowned, but he hasn't taken them right down to the bone or the gingiva level, sorry. And then he's put ceca attachments on top. And then you see how this kind of dips right there? That's because he fabricated a denture with a negative freeway space. So instead of remaking the denture, he ground down the natural dentition. Yeah. So Esther and I scanned this, and then we're looking at it, and we're like, what the heck is going on here? So we asked him, we're like, do you grind? Like, what's going on? He's like, oh no, like, he had to take my bottom teeth down to make room for the denture. And we're like, oh, okay. And then we go in the back room, and we're like, what the hell? We're like, oh my God, this is so bad. But then again, small town, we all have to work with him. Great guy. I mean, this is where you can go forward with your treatment planning and your communication tools and say, hey, we have this record. Going forward, if you want to do these types of cases, let's maybe, make sure we have enough room. Let's maybe take them down to the gingival level, do a couple other things. But anyways, it's an interesting case. So we did this one digitally because those Sika attachments are quite small there on those tips. So to pour that up and not break them is sometimes could pose a little bit of a challenge. They were all shiny, shiny gold. So in here they look a little green, they look a little black, and that's just with the way the reflection goes with the mirror. The Trios does have trouble scanning in shiny gold things. So milled bars, fresh crowns, things like that, it's a little bit tricky. We're still working on trying to find a matte substance that you can put on them that doesn't wash away with saliva, because that's the thing is everyone was talking about intraoral sprays and you can spray them on the bar, but the thing is that when saliva touched those, then you're taking it and where your initial scan had the powder in position A, now the saliva's touched it, move it over here, and the scanner's confused and your record's wrong. So stay away from those. They're not good. So for the implants, they're accurate. You have that record. You have better analyzing tools. So when I was talking about the anterior-posterior spread earlier, I literally took that screenshot and sent it to the oral surgeon and said, hey, like I'm a little bit worried about this. What are your thoughts from your end of it? Are you thinking about putting an implant in the anterior? What are we doing here? So it lends you a communication tool that makes things easier and then treatment planning more effective for the patient. And again, patient compliance. When you're dealing with implants, they still need to keep those things clean. They've spent a lot of money on them. And you're dealing with a different type of patient when they have implants. They're quite interesting. That's what we've found anyways. They've paid a lot of money and they want things to work, and I totally understand that. So again, when you can involve them and you can say, hey, I'm going to talk to Dr. so-and-so about this, they feel at ease knowing that everyone's kind of communicating together. So then the other question that's come up a lot is, okay, well, why would we do it that way? Why would we, use the Trios to scan in a final impression? Why? And that was a huge one. Or why would we, scan the edentulous tissue? And so this has been a topic that's come up quite a bit lately. The reasons that we use the Trios to scan are, say, Esther's scanning something in our desktop scanner, then I'll just Trios scan it. We need to, get moving on. We have patients all during the day. I can't backlog and wait for the desktop. We have 2 other Dentures joining us in 1 month. So 4 Dentures, 1 lab scanner, 1 Trios, and we're all women. Things are gonna get a little bit interesting. But it's all about time management, scheduling, things like that. It's nice to have that second option. The other big reason is in order to integrate with the Bellis, the scans need to come from the Trios. So that's where when we've scanned in final impressions, we do it that way if the patient's super picky, they're from a rural area, so that we can impose their face over top of their new smile and do a virtual try-in rather than have them back for an in-house try-in. We learned this the hard way. It's very important. Only Trio scans. There is a workaround. If you want to come bug me later, I'll tell you about it because I think it's going to work. So here we are. We've taken our final impressions in a set of dentures, and now what I was doing there is I was scanning in the bite. So I'd already scanned in the lower, I'd scanned in the upper, and now we're just telling the computer how to align it together. This is Tim again. We're getting ready to do the Bellis 3D facial scan. The Bellis is an amazing tool. Esther and I had it for 6 months, could not figure it out. Finally got so frustrated, we called Eric, the owner of Bellis, and said, Eric, how the hell do we do this? Because we want to do it. We've tried to just do the photographs. We're not getting it. What are we missing? And so in an airport on a layover, he went through it with us, and we were like, wow, there's a reason my hair is blonde, for sure. It's a lot easier than I thought it was. So here the audio will go on this in a second. But what you do is you get the patient, we have an iPad, and there's a couple ways to do it. We have them hold the iPad. You can also do it so the iPad's on a stand and you're moving it, or the patient can move it. There's a few different ways.
Look at the camera. Turn left. Turn to the middle. Turn right. Turn to the middle. Capture completed.
So that's as easy as it is for the patient, okay? Going forward, I love the idea of the stand and moving it because this is Tim's 3D facial scan. Do you see his glasses? He was like, what's wrong with my eyebrows? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, what the hell happened? But you can see that the mouth isn't distorted. So this is another thing that's kind of come into play. Okay, if his glasses are doing that, what are his posterior teeth doing? And you're like, holy cow, what am I doing? So this is where a stand comes in, because as you saw him in the scan, he kind of moved up and down a little bit, right? Patients love to watch themselves, and when you say look left, they're still like peeking over. It's kind of like every girl taking like that bathroom mirror shot, you know, checking each other out. So that's the fun thing about the Bellis. But when you take it and then with your finger, you can move it around, and now you have a 3D facial scan. They're absolutely in awe. It's fun. So we use the Bellis for virtual try-ins. So out-of-town patients that don't want to come back in, we can just send them that way as long as we're confident in the bite. We do this for all of our immediate cases because we do not go to a finished milled denture without absolute positive approval on this photo. This is, again, important when it comes down to it's not click, click, boom, and everything's aligned and pretty. You still have to be able to align it properly. If you don't align it properly, it's obviously not going to look correct in the mouth. Yeah.
Are you printing your healing dentures now?
Oh. Yeah. So the question was, are we printing our healing dentures and then doing the milled, or are we going straight to a milled? The question is, we don't have a set in stone workflow for that yet. I will do a printed denture if they're picky. I will do a printed denture if I don't feel 110% confident in my bite. Or I will do a printed denture if they have a lot of bone and the dentist doesn't want to do a reduction on it because I want to make it look nicer. It's a huge benefit. We can print them with the Asiga. It's fantastic. The only downfall is you cannot put a tissue conditioner, a soft one, into a printed denture. So if you end up having to, we do a hard Tokiyama, and then we can do a soft over top of that. Okay. The hard Tokiyama still doesn't stick awesome, but it works. Esther loves to go more to the milled one just because they are obviously a bit more accurate. So to answer the question, it is case specific. But for the super picky ones, I always do this. It's nice. Lets me sleep at night, lets them sleep at night. And you know that the dentures that you're putting out into the world are always going to look pretty good. Okay? And that just hits on the bottom note there, the very specific patient. We had one lady, and I'm not joking, we finally had to take our case pens in. We had done 30 try-ins for her. She is an upper-lower patient at that point. She cost me a lot of money, and I don't own the clinic yet, and Esther's looking at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, sorry. So you have to, digital is a fantastic tool, but it has, some downfalls when you get patients like that. There's some things that, we looked at and said, how could we do this better? And what I'm thinking is, if you have a 3D printed try-in, and they're like, hey, I want my lateral a little bit turned, you could grind that tooth off, then go to your carded tooth that you have that's that model, and then stick it on there with a little bit of wax, and then you can scan that in and just make sure that you copy it. So that's a way to get around that. And you also just have some patients that were like her, that were like, nope, I want to come back in next week. And then you give it, and you're like, do all the changes, you write them down, you do the Bellis, and she's like, I think I kind of like that last one a little bit better, and it's feeling just a little bit loose. So can you take another impression and do it again? And you're like, Barbara, why? So anyways, you do get patients like that, and that's where digital is a little bit tricky. So the more things you can use, like Bellis facial scanners, fairly good printed dentures, the less appointments hopefully that you'll have with those types of people. So for our rural patients, this one's huge. We have a lot of native reserves around where we are from, and most often they'll actually fly in their elders to see us. So, some of those trips are costing $1,000 for them to get the planes into these rural reserves and then get them back out. So basically the more money they save, the happier are, and the more money they're likely to spend at our clinic later on down the road, because we can make dentures a bit quicker. And for these people coming in, they literally live out in the middle of nowhere. So, and a lot of them are older. So coming in, it's a little bit hard for them. We had one patient, she was 95, pretty crippled, so you don't want to put her in the back of a tiny little plane a whole bunch. Okay, patients absolutely love the virtual try-in. They show their friends, they show their family. Yes, we're like, yes, we can 3D print them, but probably not, because that's a lot of resin. So they love it. The other thing that we can do too is we sometimes will just bring patients in the back. So if they're from out of town, we can scan them in, we can take them right into the back on the computer, and we can show them the different smile libraries and things like that. We have done that with some, just again to save some time. And like I said, now we're producing things that are more accurate, because when they have a try-in now that they can bite down hard on that fits them quite well, they're not worried about, the wax warming up and moving, or they chomping down and moving all your posterior teeth, and you're like, no, why did you do that? These things are amazing. And what we find now is, because the fit's good, the patients are paying more attention to what we want them to pay attention to, which is their bite and their aesthetics. That's why we do try-ins. So when you do it that way, now you have a patient that when you say, okay, are you happy with these aesthetics? Look at it, because this is going to be your smile for 5 to 7 years. Make sure that you love it. This is pretty much how tight I can get it for you. The milled one might be a little bit tighter, and that's how we say it to them. Now they're paying attention, again, to giving us proper records and making sure that they love it, because nobody likes remaking dentures. So we'll run through a fully digital workflow here. There's the trios, there's the design, there's the printing, and then that's the mill that we have there. So that question that was asked earlier about printing or milling, like I said, it's patient-specific or case-specific on whether we go to a printed immediate denture or we go to a milled immediate denture, and that you just simply stipulate in your order form. So at the first appointment, we are obtaining our digital records. So it's for us to analyze. We can communicate with the dentist. Hopefully they'd give us a little bit of bone reduction in the posterior here. We're verifying all the new aesthetics. You can get a lot of information, obviously, from what people already have. So this is beautiful. And the other beautiful thing about being digital is that back before, when you would grind the teeth off, making your immediate denture, and everyone does it a little bit different, you would eventually lose the teeth. Now what you have is you're going to digitally extract these teeth, but when you get to your smile design stage, those teeth are going to magically come back. So you always have that reference, which is key. Immediates will turn into cases that you hated before and that you love now. That's what happened with me anyways. So new aesthetics, you're verifying that interocclusal distance. And I love this function for immediate dentures, because when you tell patients, hey, you're going to continue to shrink for a year, and they come back after a month, they're like, hey, yeah, Carson, I want my rebase. I'm like, no, like you still have way, way longer. So then you can pull up a scan, and I'll scan their mouth and overlay them and say, hey, like this is how much you've shrunk already in 1 month. Now imagine where you're going to be in 2 months. And when they see it, they realize it. And then when they realize that it's actually their body that's changing and not your prosthetic, you go from the bad guy to the good guy. And we love being the good guy. Also at this appointment, we do the Bellis 3D facial scan. This is Eric, the owner of Bellis, fantastic guy. Bellis 3D is the easiest form of facial scanning to integrate, in my opinion. There's a lot of workarounds even with the Bellis because people didn't know how to align it into 3Shape. They've worked closely now with 3Shape to make things much easier. It's fantastic. It's easy for the patient to use, as you guys saw there. You can easily put it on that stand too, so you're back in control there. And the customer support is fantastic. When you get into digital, whoever you buy your product through, make sure that they have good support. If you guys take one thing away from Chicago, please take that away, because when you spend thousands upon thousands of dollars on all of this equipment and you get home and you're on that high because you've heard all these inspirational lectures and seen all these amazing things, and then you turn your computer on and you're like, where the hell do I start? You want to be able to make a phone call to somebody that knows what they're doing, and support is one thing that is the most untalked about thing here, where you guys should just really pay attention to it. Side note, we were with a different supplier before when we purchased everything, and they had support, but it was more for crown and bridge. We also had a Trios computer that blew up on us when we were going to Kelowna, and I was supposed to live intraoral scan a patient. And we got a, so sorry, you didn't read the fine print. That computer's not under warranty. And we're like, what? This is like a huge gaming computer. What do you mean it's not under warranty? It's a year old. And they're like, yeah. So Esther and I are at this lecture being like, are you kidding me? And we had another supplier called Argen that went out to their office, got a computer for us, and let us take it home because we had 7 partial starts that day. They saved us a lot of money, and at that moment we switched directly to them. They are fantastic. And not just because I'm speaking for them, they are really good. We've worked with a few. So here, when you're looking at the order form, a few things to highlight. Obviously, you have your patient information here. You've obviously selected the teeth, the gingiva. This bridge function here is something that took Esther and I 6 months or 8 months to figure out, because by bridging the teeth, what you do is you unlock the algorithm to make sure that you can do your excursions and adapt your excursions. For denture people, this is huge. And the other big thing about this order form is digital impression. If you receive anything from the Trios, it needs to be put as a digital impression. This is very important. This function up here lets you do a lot of workarounds for cases that aren't even from the Trios.
Can you extrapolate about bridging the teeth? Are you talking about denture teeth connected, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So what it does is it bridges them. We bridge ours in the full span from 7 to 7. You can also bridge them now in posteriors, 2 sections of posteriors and anteriors. You can bridge them through the midline, half and half. You can bridge them in a few different ways, which is kind of a cool function for people that are milling. It saves you more money because you can fit more teeth on a puck.
Can I ask a quick question again?
Yeah, go ahead.
So why wouldn't you do that for all the cases? I mean, you always have dentures with the teeth coming out and the patients coming in. I mean, would you then, do you do that as standard?
Yes. We bridge, and we actually don't section our teeth unless we're doing our printing or milling teeth for a partial. We keep it as a bridge because the other thing it does is you don't get a single tooth pop out, and now you don't get the flexure, right? So when we had single teeth, and you're waxing up as smoothly as you can, there's still things that can go wrong. When you're going to a milled, it's more uniform, and like I said, we keep it all as one just for a strength component in our dentures. So this digital impression tool up here is fantastic. It'll let you do a lot of funky things. You guys can come bug me about those later. There's tons of workarounds, but you need to have this tool in order to use it. So when you select digital impression, it allows you to double check your alignment of your bite, so you have one more chance to jump back. And if you're looking at it a little bit closer now, you zoom in and you're like, oh crap, that's definitely not perfect. You can align it again. So this is big because this is your quadruple check of your bite. You've checked it multiple times in the mouth, you've checked it on the Trios, and now you've checked it on this computer. And this is also, I believe, why our prosthetics are just that much better, is because our ability to take a good bite is there now. You can refine the scans. So when we first got the Trios, if you had even a tiny little hole, you would have to pull it into Mesh Mixer, fix the hole, and work with it that way. They've advanced the technology now where it's a little bit more forgiving. Still, you have to do a good scan, but if you do get the odd hole in there, it tends to fix it. And then before, like I said, you'd have to use a lot of software outside of 3Shape. Now it's not like that. And it lets you, again, do a lot of amazing things that I could talk on 2 other lectures about. So what you'll do is you'll receive the Trios orders in your 3Shape Communicate inbox. And then you accept them, and then they become in here. And this is where you set up your order form. So with the Trios, when you're in that room with the patient, you can get clinical notes, tooth shade. You get the tissued colored scan, which is beneficial for the patient, for you, for anyone that you're talking to. It's technically, I guess, articulated in that proper bite. You get dates that it's required by, and you get clinical photos. This is a lot of information, and a lot of information before that would require, a fairly big bin and a lot of time. Now this is done quite quickly, and it's just a lot more organized. So this is a tool also that I love about 3Shape, the 3D cross-sectioning. So if you right-click, you can go down and choose this tool here, and it'll pull up this screen. And then you can click this really cool button over here. It looks like this. And then you can cross-section. This tool is absolutely amazing. We have a dentist that loves to do a lot of conus implant systems, and those require 12 millimeters of room. Before, we would take our little flex ruler and we're measuring in between the arches. Now what we can do is you can actually put a grid on this, and there's a measurement tool. So you can click 2 points, as you see down here, and it'll tell you exactly how much room you have. Dentists love this. Dentists are blown away by this, and it makes our treatment planning that much easier. We can say, hey, we're only at 10 mils. We can't do it. Let's go back to the drawing board and figure out what we can do, because the last thing you want to do is put in, a conus case that requires 12 mils. You only have 10 mils, and then, what do? You end up like the other dentist grinding down natural dentition, and then no one likes that. So again, just to highlight, in order to get the grid, you click this button here, and then you just click on your points here, and then your other point here for your measurement. Easy, nice. This is nice too for bone reduction stuff. You can show, how much they have to take off, which is good. And that's it there in a better view for you guys. So treatment planning with this tool has become amazing. It's become fun. It's become, a lot more successful because of the involvement of the patient and so many other people. It's accurate, you're giving them a visual, and they love to talk about it. Okay? So here, when I talked about before aligning the bite, this is where you get your chance to do it. I don't know why, but 3Shape always tends to jump you down to here. All you have to do is just click back to aligning the bite. So there you can do the 1-point alignment, which I did talk to 3Shape, and it's more accurate to do a 1-point alignment than it is to do a 3-point alignment. Although sometimes it just doesn't work and you have to go to that 3, but try and stick at just doing the 1-point alignment. So you'll do the upper, then you'll do the lower, and then you'll get to see and make sure that it's perfect. This is the refine scan. This will change your life right over here. Okay? These will fix your scan if any holes or any goofy things that shouldn't be there. But the thing I want to talk about is this. Before, if you took an impression in the patient's mouth, or in, say, an existing set of dentures, and you scanned that in with the trios, Valerie Cooper kind of called it the cupcake method before, if you guys are familiar with that, the denture queen, she's pretty well known. But then you would have to pull that data into Mesh Mixer. You have to flip the normals, and then you'd have to pull that back into 3Shape so that it read the file correctly, okay? Now, all you have to do is hit impression and tick off this box, and it'll be beautiful. If you forget, moving forward, you're gonna get an error that says your scan is not watertight. Go back. Make sure you've refined, make sure you've done an impression. If you still get it, then that's when you have to pull it into the Mesh Mixer because there's likely a hole or something there. But this will save you tons of time. This is an awesome, awesome tool. Tooth extraction. What you can do here is it's this button with the X. See how this box is the only one that was checked off? We do not check the box off below it. The reason that we don't is if you look at this red outline, it's right at that gingival margin. When we're making immediates, we like to go just a little bit further because it's going to give us a little bit more room. So all you have to do is right-click on that spline. You get a fast edit line option, and then you can just draw it down just a little bit further, which is great. And there's no dust, and the teeth will come back. It's a great tool. So bone reduction, this is where you can work with your dentist. You can make guides, you can make all kinds of stuff. And the nice thing too with the bone reduction is if you take off from the model, later on down the road when you get into like the smile design stuff, you can toggle it back over so you can see how much bone you've taken. Maybe you want to play a little bit more and you run back to this step and you can shave off a little bit more to make it look a little nicer. So the nice thing, like I said, with digital is you always have those records. Blocking out, this one's big, especially for immediates if we're not inserting them. This is also big if you're milling dentures. If you are printing immediate dentures, it's an additive function. The resin's added on top of each other. When you are milling, it goes on 5 axes with the burr, and it's got to try and get in there. If you have massive undercuts, the burr sometimes cannot get in there, and then what you're going to have to do is modify it chair side. So the more that you can do digitally, the more accurate it will be. This gives you your undercut depth, so we try and block out anything that's red or orange. The yellow is okay. Obviously, you want some retention. Yeah, go ahead.
So for your undercuts, will you take it 3D and turn it yourself, or will the software be able to identify the undercuts for you?
So that's basically like surveying is kind of what you're asking on the angle of it. The system does it for you. The system does it in the blocking out stage right here, and you can either move it or the software can move it for you. Okay. So when you add the wax onto here, Nikki, who does all of our milling, she loves you because then it just makes the denture a lot better. There's not as many undercuts, so the burr, A, we don't risk breakage as easily, and B, we're just going to get a better fitting prosthetic. And then the other thing is dentists don't like to insert dentures that don't want to go in. So this is a really nice tool. This is also nice for suction dentures because we like to put a bead of wax on the lower ridge on the top just to save a little bit of room. So it's really nice because you get an absolute uniform thickness doing that. And here they are. The teeth come back. It's a miracle. You see them. You have everything that you can reference. You can look at whether or not you want to keep a similar tooth, or we use the Fabulous Smiles tooth library. Fantastic. If you haven't bought it, buy it. It is amazing. They did an amazing job. They scanned natural teeth and then created denture libraries out of this stuff, and they're amazing. Some of them you have to modify so that they work as a denture, but other than that, patients love them because they feel like they're natural teeth. They don't look like a denture. And I think they're beautiful. I like it. I like it when people say, I had a remark that, it doesn't look like I'm wearing a denture. That's the biggest compliment that I can get. So the patient can flip through the book as you're, running to get a coffee or in the back accepting your scans. So again, they're involved. They can see it. They can feel it. They have a book. They're in the driver's seat. They're happy. And if she comes back and she's like, hey, yeah, I don't like this. It's like, okay, well, Betty, remember that appointment when you sat down and you had the book and you picked out your smile? Like, what's changed in 2 days? So, you know what I mean? You get less of those conversations and more of, I love these. These are awesome. This is also the step 2. So we've pulled in that library now, and you can see the overlay with the teeth where we pull in our 3D facial scan. So Fabulous Smiles library there. And then we pull the Bellis head in, and it's already been aligned. It goes in perfectly because we've done that on the Bellis side. And this is where we send our virtual try-in photos. So we send them a before to remind them, what we're working with. We send them a side profile view and then a frontal view. Text or email, reply yes to approve, reply no, and to book an appointment to come in and talk to the denturist. It's that easy. And then that's when, if they say no, then we just bring them to the back. We do give them a fair warning. The color's wrong, and they do look a little bit cartoony, but you're going to get the idea of shape, size, and what they look like in your smile, okay? The most important thing with the Bellis is when you're taking that record, you need to make sure that they are in the same bite position as they were when you recorded their bite. It's another really key feature. Then we have the articulator. This is a really cool tool. You can open the pin. That's when you're working with your freeway space. If you're going to use the CAD, which sticks onto the centric tray, and then you can align it, it's, they say it's like a virtual face bow, but not actually because it's not connecting to the condyles. But it gives you, it's like a high-end Fox plane is all it is. But you can input those numbers into this so things get a little bit more accurate. And a really awesome tool with this is if you have lower dentition on the bottom, you can use this tool down here, this little joystick, and cut to antagonist. So we always bring our teeth just a little bit through. We cut to antagonist, and then we do our working and balancing, and they are like butter. We've never seen dentures work so beautifully before. So the excursions, this one was huge. When you adapt the teeth, doing your working and balancing, your lateral shifts, it does not change the vertical. That was huge. Vertical is so important in cases that, sometimes when you're checking it on the paper, you're modifying it too much, and now you've closed that patient a mill. So this is a nice tool to have. Uniform wax. 3Shape is working on this because right now you get to this stage of the wax up and everything's red and you're like, what the heck? I told the computer I want 2 millimeters of uniform thickness, and it's not. So there's a gingivator tool coming out in 2020, and it kind of takes the time out of it, because it takes a lot of time, to do a nice wax up digitally. So that'll be something that's really cool in the 2020. But the nice thing about this is when you can look at a view like this and kind of see where your wax is thick, this surpasses anything that we could have done in, in the analog world, where you're poking your wax up tool in to find out how thick it exactly is. So this is nice. So just to speak a little bit more on the partials, the way that we do it is we send the digital scans to our lab, and then they do their portion of it to make the chrome. The other thing is some people can 3D print, and then you can dupe your models. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do it, and integrating a partial and a full workflow is a little bit tricky because they can't be in the same order form. I wish that they had a drop-down menu that said, okay, on the top I have a complete upper, on the bottom I have a partial, let's go through everything, but it just unfortunately doesn't work like that right now. So for you in your workflows and in your offices, you guys will figure out, a way, do you want to do the partial first, or do you want to do the opposing first, and how you're going to work that with the bite alignment. So again, you can communicate so easily with the dentist, and it also saves you on shipping because you're sending everything digitally, which is nice. My favorite tools, like I've talked about a lot today, is, you have everything right there in front of you, and you can screenshot it and say, hey, I need this, or hey, I don't like this, or hey, I'm worried about this. It's easy. And the measurement tool, like I said, for us when we're doing implant planning or anything like that, it's a huge, huge benefit. And this is truly a wow factor. When we have a dentist in and we can sit down and you can show them something like this, they're amazed. They want to know, they want to play with it, and now we have that record forever of that patient. It really is a wow factor. But I'll speak on it again, as much as I talked about support and some things that we've learned along the way, is digital is an amazing tool. It's absolutely phenomenal, and where we've come in the last year is amazing. But please don't be fooled, or please don't have a glorified view that thinks that you're going to buy this technology and in 5, 10, 15 minutes you're going to know how to use it, because you're not. It took us a year. And that's still us learning every day. That's still us traveling around the globe to find out how do we do these things, because we just don't know. It's us using social network facets. It's us coming to events like this and networking and saying, hey, I have this case. I can pull it up on my app. You're showing and you're talking with people. It is an amazing tool, but it does take time. It takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of patience. And patience, especially when you're intraoral scanning, it's huge. So at first, it's a little bit tricky. It's kind of like when we took our first alginate. We were totally that person on the left. Maybe that's why I made her gag that day. I don't know. But then you work on it, and you end up being a denturist that can take an impression like that. When we get into scanning, you can scan your own mouth quite quickly, 30 seconds. Your trainer's gonna be like, here's the trios, have fun, like scan each other. And you're like, yes, this is awesome, this is easy. And then that patient's gonna come in that has a free end extension, and you're like, why isn't it working? What the heck, it was so easy when Linda was here, or whoever, right? So the thing is just as much as how you had a hard time when you took your first alginate, you're going to also take time to learn how to use an intraoral scanner. It does take time, and it takes a hell of a lot of patience. But at the end result, it is absolutely worth it. This is Tim, so it's kind of surreal for me because that denture on the left was made by the guy I used to work for. This denture on the right was made by myself. And this basically reiterates to me is this is where I could have been, and this is the practitioner I could have been, and this is the practitioner that I am today. It's amazing, and they love it. And before and afters, you send them on a card to them, and they love them. We've had so many patients crying in our office, it's not even funny. And a lot of flower and chocolate deliveries too, so it's not good for the bikini bod, but we'll take it. When it comes down to it, digital lends you an accuracy that's amazing. It truly is. It lets you cut down on chair time doing things like adjustments. Yes, your chair time is going to go up when you initially get this stuff, but like I said, the stats don't lie. And when your adjustments are down by 82 point whatever %, that's a lot of time where you can be making a lot more money. And we all like money because then we can buy cool other digital things, like another PM7. So I'm working on it with Esther. And therefore, like I said, you're making a little bit more money, which is nice. Then you can come to events like this. So we are on all social media facets. We also have personal accounts too. If you guys want to go ahead, you can add those, add us on Facebook, let us know kind of where you're at, and we can add you to different groups. There is certain criteria for the groups, so that's where the more information that we can get is awesome. But contact us anyway through there, and I just want to say thank you again to Argen. This has been an amazing event, and thank you guys for coming.